Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Elko, Texas A&M, going into what I think is going to be a really fun spring practice session for Texas A&M. And I think the biggest thing that I think realized as I was prepping this episode here is a lot more competitive depth heading into this spring practice as we were 12 months ago. Look, 12 months ago, it was just a ton of moving parts. And there were a lot of things that needed to change from Jimbo Fisher to Mike Elko. And I think Texas A&M is just a little bit more further along in terms of how they think this roster is going into this year's spring practice. And as you get more competitive depth, you have a lot more exciting position battles to talk about. And there are some really intriguing ones for Texas A&M. Want to run down this depth chart, just talk about what some of these position battles will look like. I'm going to call my shot at a few of them in terms of who I think really emerges out of spring practice as difference makers for Texas A&M. Before we get into it, as always, to the Texas A&M fans, most importantly, let it fly in the comment section in terms of what position battles are you most excited for. For sure, call your shot in the comment section. To the Texas A&M fans, it's been so fun talking this football program over the last 12 months. The amount of support y'all continue to show means the world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, let's start with the wide receiver room. This is by far, and maybe not by far, but it's one of the things that excites me the most about Texas A&M going into 2025. They really built this thing around Marcel Reed, and I give Mike Elko a ton of credit for doing so. I think there were a lot of college football coaches across the country that kind of panicked at quarterback. And I think Mike Elko said, hey, Marcel Reed, it wasn't perfect for Marcel Reed as a redshirt freshman. In my opinion, it was pretty damn good. And I think Mike Elko knows he has a quarterback that he can win with. I think the biggest question mark was, is there enough around Marcel Reed for him to be maximized going into 2025? Yeah, 2 months ago, there certainly wasn't. Going into spring practice, this wide receiver room is significantly more talented and significantly more deep than it was 12 months ago. Now, how does this wide receiver rotation shake out over the next couple of weeks? I think that's one of the most exciting storylines where, look, Casey Concepcion, lock, going to lead this team in receiving yards, going to be that real wide receiver one that Texas A&M kind of had with Noah Thomas, but I don't think really. I think Texas A&M has one with Casey Concepcion, and now it's, hey, who are the other guys that step up? I think the two X factors here are, one, Micah Hudson. What's going on with him? I'm not going to speak too much on it, but he's a guy that we all know has an incredible amount of talent, and if he kind of settles in at Texas A&M, difference maker at the wide receiver spot. The other name that I will say here is Terry Bussey. You won't find anybody that's higher on Terry Bussey going into year two than I am. And this is a guy that had never played wide receiver previous to his freshman year. And because Texas A&M had some injuries at wide receiver, and quite frankly, just didn't have enough good wide receivers last year, they thrusted Terry Bussey into that wide receiver room. And it was, to me, consistent, steady improvement, and kind of culminating in a really impressive bowl game against USC. Terry Bussey having a full, I mean, he wasn't even here for spring practice last year. He was a summer enrollee. So he was the kind of guy that, one, had never played wide receiver before. He was a quarterback and defensive back at the high school ranks. And number two, wasn't even here for spring practice. They just threw him out on the football field in the SEC. And I thought he certainly looked the part. What does it look like with a full offseason, kind of perfecting or honing his craft at the wide receiver position? I think he could be a legit dude for Texas A&M. And then you talk about a guy like Mario Craver, who is a very good freshman for Mississippi State. He's coming on over. I've heard some rumors, some buzz around Ashton Bethel-Roman going into year two. Y'all know I'm a massive fan of true freshman Jerome Miles. 6'2", 200 plus, runs a 10.4 in the 100-meter dash. There's a ton of talent. I think you have one known commodity in Casey Concepcion, and now it's, hey, what of these young, talented wide receivers in this room are going to take that step and be guys? To me, it's a numbers game. Mike Elko, I believe, an Ivy League dude. He's a numbers guy. You fill this wide receiver room up with enough talent, you guys are going to rise to the top and be difference makers. And I feel really good about the talent around Marcel Reed in terms of pass catchers. I think another sneaky one here is the tight end position. Amari Niblack coming in is probably the name to watch. I think from a talent, and this is why I was such a big addition of this transfer portal get for Texas A&M. Where look, Amari's kind of a tricky guy that flashed in a big time way with Alabama in 2023. Was kind of a no show for Texas in 2024, primarily because he wasn't a good enough run blocker. He's extremely talented, and you have some guys that you feel really good about, right? You have Theo, you're bringing Nate Borkisher. Nate Borkisher is about as solid as it comes. He's not going to be an all-conference guy, but he's going to be a solid tight end for you. Amari provides that unknown ceiling for Texas A&M at tight end, and we all know, going back to how we talked about Coach Colin Klein 12 months ago, the tight end position is important in the Coach Colin Klein offense. Can Amari be that high upside tight end? Can he become that high upside tight end that I think Texas A&M took a gamble on in the transfer portal? Look, if he doesn't work, you got tight ends that you trust. If he does work, you're looking at an all-conference tight end. I am very excited to see what we hear from him over the next couple of weeks on the offensive line. Part of the reason I'm so optimistic about Texas A&M is, one, this unit was significantly better in 2024 than it was in 2023. Clearly going in the right direction under Adam Cushing, and you return pretty much everybody from the offensive line in 2024. Continuity among the offensive line it's massive, and there's not a lot of offensive lines in the country that have the continuity Texas A&M has. Can this unit take a step, and who are the guys that maybe could work their way into the starting five? I think it's going to look like the way you see it on your screen. I would highlight Lamont Rogers. Look, I ain't a guy that gets up here and bangs the table for true freshmen to play year one in the SEC, especially on the offensive line. Lamont Rogers is a different kind of cat. He certainly has the size and physicality. There's no talk about Lamont Rogers saying, hey, we got to put some weight on him before he can play. He could play. He's big enough and strong enough to play. He's a road grader in the run game. Now it's just, hey, do we trust him enough to put him out there as a freshman? Look, you don't need to, because you have a guy in Crownover who started, I believe, every single game at right tackle. Can Lamont Rogers maybe push him? And this is kind of that example of the competitive depth that you're building up and down this Texas A&M roster, which is only going to make this team better going into 2025. Not really many, I think, legit position battles on the offensive line because you return so much. Keep an eye on my guy, Lamont Rogers. Going to the defensive side of the football, the position battles on the defensive line, they're not like, look, all these guys are going to play. It's just who plays the most. The biggest concern, I think, with this Texas A&M football team in general here is, what do you get on the inside of the defensive line? Are we good enough? But I think just as importantly, are we deep enough? Do we have enough bodies to go 12-plus games in the SEC here? There's three names that you have to look at. Yeah, I think Albert Regis, is going to be solid. Probably not going to be a first-team All-SEC guy, but he's good. He played very, very well for Texas A&M last year. You're bringing Tyler O'Neill from Iowa State, very, very solid. That piece that Texas A&M added, and that's something that I'll kind of point out here. Mike Elko, yes, he'll inject starting caliber guys through the transfer portal. Does a really nice job picking up depth pieces as well in the transfer portal. And that's something you can do. Not every transfer portal addition needs to be a bona fide first team all conference dude. You can get quality starters that might only, or quality players, I should say, that might only give you 20 snaps a game. That's going to matter. I mean, the 20 snaps that Tyler plays is going to be big for Texas A&M in 2025. Three names, in my opinion, that I know this is kind of a hyperbolic statement here. Three names that I think play a massive role in the Texas A&M season in 2025. DJ Hicks, Dalen Evans, DJ Sanders. DJ Hicks going into year 3, can you put it together? Dalen Evans, a guy that we knew would need a year, but certainly could be ready going into year 2. And look, DJ Sanders, another guy like Lamont Rogers, is ready to play. Can he give you 10 to 20 really good snaps a game as a true freshman on the inside? If you get 2 out of the 3 of those names emerge as really solid football players, potentially very good football players, that answers to me the biggest question mark I have for Texas A&M on the defensive line. Linebacker position, running it back with Torian York and Scooby Williams, fan of it. Noah McKell's a freshman that I really like, but I think Torian York, Scooby Williams, Damian Sanford continues to be kind of a riser there. You're pretty set at off-ball linebacker. And then in the secondary, I think I think, quite frankly, Will Lee is probably the one guy that I would pencil in as a starter. That is competition top to bottom. starting at the nickel position with a guy like Jordan Shaw coming in through the portal. I think he starts, but there's going to be a battle there. Des Ricks, Julian Humphrey competing for the cornerback spot opposite Will Lee. It's going to be huge. I mean, two really, really talented football players, two guys that were top 100 national recruits. Which one wins it? And again, you talk about competitive depth helping your team in 2025. If you're Des Ricks, if you're Julian Humphrey, you have to be dialed in this offseason because it ain't going to be given to you. There's a lot of talent in this cornerback room. And then at the safety spot, I'd probably say the same thing. Dalton Brooks, Marcus Ratcliffe, Bryce Anderson, 3 safeties competing for 2 spots. Position battles up and down this roster. I think that's how Mike Elko wants it. If I were to predict the starting secondary, this is what it'd be. Will Lee. I'm high on Des Ricks. Like, I get Des Ricks gave up 19.5 yards per catch last year. Like, he would give up a lot of explosive plays. He missed some tackles. He's got it. He's got the talent. Can it be year 2 with this Texas A&M program that he puts it together? I'm a big fan of Dalton Brooks. I know it was kind of a roller coaster of a year with him. I'm a big fan of Marcus Ratcliffe. And look, Marcus Ratcliffe only going into year 3. He's a young cat that I think is still developing. First year in the SEC last year. There are some dudes in the secondary. To me, it's who wins the starting spots, but I think just as importantly, can this unit come together? And that's been the kind of narrative we've had all offseason where it felt like Texas A&M had the talent last year, but this unit just didn't come together. We got the talent here. We know we have a bunch of guys that can be all conference performers. Now we got to play together as a unit, communicate better, and stop giving up the big plays. And if you do that, if you're Texas A&M, like, it was just the big plays that killed this team at times. Clean that up going into year 2 with Mike Elko. It's going to be a better unit. Bet on that. A lot of competition. Those are kind of my early position battles to watch. And those are some of my early predictions in terms of who wins the starting spots. Appreciate you guys. It's going to be a fun next couple of weeks. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.